It's getting bad out there.
I'm scared.
What is it? The fence is electric.
You need to go talk to them.
You ain't got but one neighbor for 10 or 15 miles. You might want to know who they are.
Lights off at 9, and the hatch stays locked.
Yes, sir.
Go, 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 go!
We have no food. They took everything. We need your help.
Can't help you.
Can't or you won't.
Go somewhere else.
There is nowhere else.
I know you're scared. So are we.
Dear Lord, please bless this food we are about to receive. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Why didn't you say amen?
Are we safe here?
Get some sleep.
I don't think you know what's going on out there.
Why do you think I'm in here?
This baby is coming. To stay, we have to prove our value.
We got a breach!
Wait, you taking your son out there?
I'm taking you. You're either an asset or a liability.
Down here. You all answer to me.
This is your fault.
World is collapsing. That's not my fault.
You being here is no accident.
This is what happens when you try to take what's mine!
How do you expect to protect your family?
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today we have a real treat as we're talking to two AAFCA favorites, actor Derek Luke and Mr. Everything, Ali Leroi, to talk about their brand new film, American Refugee. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Mercedes Springer in Atlanta, Dana Abercrombie in New York, Rhonda Rasha Penrice in Atlanta, and Karan Lenoir in Charlottesville, Virginia. Got it all right this time. Anyway, I'm gonna let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
Hi, everyone. Mercedes here with She Critiques in Atlanta. I really got intrigued by even wanting to see this film because I know a little bit of your work, Derek, and you as well, Ali, and know you come from a little more comedy. So seeing you kind of tackle suspense and horror and race was exciting. Can you talk about the transition a little bit? How did you approach this material in tackling suspense and horror?
Well, I mean, I'm alive in the world, and I'm on the streets and I see what's going on, and I've been a fan, of course, of all sorts of genres in terms of film work. So it wasn't that much of a creative stretch for me engaging with the material. Of course, everything that I'm known for skews on the comedic side, but as an artist, I have a lot of interest and have actually put some work in and put some time into developing different sorts of material to get out into the world, because as an artist you want to be able to do as an expansive array of things as possible. So this really kind of came to me, and it was something that I was really excited about, not necessarily because of the thriller aspect. I love the drama, but because of the interpersonal and kind of societal conflicts where we are right now. This piece really spoke to a lot of what's going on in our nation on a personal level. And I just found that really, really intriguing.
Good answer, brother.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to handle you in this hair,
Oh man, you know what I mean? It's like, good answer.
I mean, I got mine back here, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to be in competition with you because I'm not gonna win that one. So
please, man.
Oh, thank you both. Yes.
Hi, Carolyn for Carolyn Talks and Here's What Happened podcast. So my question is for both you, Ali and Derek. And so the film starts out talking about this family, and it gives you kind of like a broader perspective of what's happening in the city just as things are beginning to fall apart. But then the tone shifts and goes to make it into a more contained story about two families. Can you tell me about shooting in the locations and shooting in the city and then shooting in this rural location, because it gives it does change the tone of the film a bit.
Go ahead, Derek. I'll
No,
back
you
you
go
up on this
ahead,
one.
brother. No,
All right.
this,
we
I
gonna
smell the
over polite each
fragrance
other.
of Ali in this answer. So.
Well, you know, the majority of the film is really contained. You know, it really is about the interactions between these two families and all these different people with different agendas bouncing off of each other with the same goal in mind. Everybody's trying to survive, but you know, who has one idea about how to do that and who has another idea, and how those things conflict with one another really kind of turns it into a pressure cooker. Being able to set it up you know, when we're early in the film, and it's a wider, more expansive kind of feel, even in terms of approaching that image wise. You know, I tried to shoot things as widely as I could, tried to give as much breadth and as much air to those pieces in the beginning, so that when we went into the bunker, you really felt claustrophobic and contained, and felt like you just didn't have any way out. We give a couple of breather moments, things kind of, you know, cook and start to boil over. So it was just like, it's a nice dramatic construct. I'm still here. Did everybody get that?
Yeah, your voice was coming in and out towards the end. Well, I don't know if that was just me.
Was it doing like, and that was just me. I was just performing that. That was just, my connection is stable. That was just pretending my is out.
Wow.
Derek, and what about you for filming from in the two separate locations, like going from, as he said, open to a more contained setting?
I love, you know, the contained setting was actually contained because, you know, me and Ali's conversation about the character and the containment, I was confused halfway during our shoot, and I think my favorite was the shooting out in the open, because I love movement. I love action. I think during my career, even though we're talking about the specific, I felt like I've been shooting in contained spaces. And so anytime I get a chance to go outside, but the stress of the contained, I think, just sort of added to the suspense of what we were doing. The lightning of New Orleans, shooting inside of that little, you know, box. You just, you know, the art directors, they really did a great job with that.
Yeah, I just want to say about Derek, you know, you know, any actor wants to get out into the world and, you know, to do these big scenes. But when you get in a confined circumstance like that, the actor's gifts really start to come out, because, you know, a lot of this film has to do with little, you know, there's microaggressions, there's nuance, there's little facial reactions, there's all of these little things that really help to carry a scene. And, you know, and Derek is particularly good at this little level of nuance. Sometimes it's just a glance. Sometimes it's how long you hold a look. You know, sometimes it's when you briefly turn away for a second. And all of those things, you know, really make a character whole and really make a character full. And I thought Derek really did an amazing job with that type of work in this show.
Great, thank you, both of you.
Dana Abercrombie from the Coalition. My question is for Derek. One of the interesting things about the character is that he doesn't believe in guns. You could argue and say that he's kind of a pacifist, and we see the transformation of the character as the story continues. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset and the change of the character along with the transformation, that he's completely, you would not say different, but how he views it as more as a necessity in the situation that he's in?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I think, you know, ordinary people sometimes are forced to do extraordinary things under the circumstances. And I remember around, you know, talk about, you know, a backdrop of art meets life. I remember when, you know, we all went into quarantine, I was driving LA, and I seen people standing and families standing outside the gun stores. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, are y'all prepared to? And so I think me personally, I never really cared for guns, but because of all the fear and the whisper, the question was, what are you really willing to do to defend the people you love? And so that's how I can answer that and how I looked at that narrative. Is that okay, Ali?
That's fine. You're doing fantastic.
Thank you.
Who's next? What do we got?
Hi, this is Karan from Karanism.com. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I am a veteran, and the man I love is also a veteran, combat vets. And I thought it was really interesting how there were small moments of joy under siege when there was so much pressure. And that really connected with me because everybody has a different idea of what it really means to survive and how you do that. Every single character, even the children, held their own space, their own ideology about what would be best for the survival of their family and took action. I really would like to know more about the thought and the energy behind the writing and the performances with that.
Well, you know, the reality of people who are under siege is that that is not a 24/7, 365 active endeavor. It's a condition. But the way that that condition manifests and plays out in active and dynamic ways, you know, might be an explosion here, a burst of gunfire there, some sort of violent and sudden activity. But then there's these other periods where things are calm. And unfortunately, you know, when you're under duress in that particular sort of way, you learn to adjust. So, you know, it's not different than life in a dangerous neighborhood. You know, the level of threat might rise whether you are, you know, in South LA or in, you know, Pakistan, but the ultimate end of that threat, which could be, you know, certainly great injury and possibly death, is not different. And so you can either move through a day with this level of fear and trepidation that prevents you from doing anything than being hunkered down and guarded, or you begin to get astute and aware of when is the danger coming? What does it look like when it's about to arrive? And then what do I need to do in those moments to prepare for it? But other than that, you try to learn how to live. You try to learn how to engage. You want to laugh, you want to smile, you want to have a conversation, you want to have a drink. But if something happens, you want to have a level of awareness that says, okay, it's time to stop playing. You know, there's danger afoot. So I don't think that it's unusual for people who are living under, you know, dangerous, traumatic, stress-filled circumstances to find ways to cope and to relax and to have some type of joy, but the ability to turn it off in an instant and become guarded and vigilant around, you know, your safety and space. A lot of us don't really necessarily have that thing, but I think it's something that would definitely exist with people in a circumstance like this.
How about you, Derek?
I'm like hanging on to his words. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. I was asking about the small moments of joy. And because there is an element of a military veteran and another brilliant family with different ideas of survival, what informed your performance?
The space, you know, and what I love about Greg is sometimes what I don't get to see in real life is that you got to see two men, two different backgrounds, you know, opposite ethnicity. And, you know, like, for instance, when I go back home, it seems like a lot of people who I knew only traveled within the 4-mile radius. And so in one side, that resembles a containment. But what I loved about this particular situation was that growing up in a predominantly, you know, Black neighborhood, I didn't converse a lot with, you know, non-people of color. And so to me, what informed me was, well, how do you respond in a situation like this with people with different ideologies, where you can't hide? And to me, that's what made it interesting and fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy with Couple Social. One of the themes is what you just spoke about there is working together, you know, which is, and people not trusting each other, but they're forced to circumstances to have to. I found this movie to be very parallel to the themes of our country right now. You know, how do you have the words of unity when we are, so many things are driving us apart? There's a particular scene where he's looking at you sideways because you're not saying amen. So now he's questioning, are you a person of faith? And it's these little details that are expounding because we're looking for anything to tear one another apart. What did you draw upon to kind of like connect? Was it just how you feel about the world today? Or is there a particular thing that was like, okay, I understand how to approach this?
You know, no, I thought that scene actually was interesting. Was that scripted or just improv, Ali?
No, it was scripted.
Yeah, I think in this particular moment in time, one of the large arguments is, do you and I share the same core values? And if we don't, could we find something in common that can unify us? You know what I mean? And so I think that the more and more, you know, as life goes on, as you get older, life gets richer as far as experience. And, you know, I think the natural moment sort of asked us, you know, or asked at that particular moment as an actor, yeah, I do have different core values, but at the end of the day, I think we want the same thing. We want to be heard. We want unity, perhaps peace, and to be, you know, so that's what comes to my heart right now. Hopefully that answers the question. You just had me thinking sort of on a dialectic, Socratic way. So sometimes I gotta hone in or on those thoughts to give a specific answer.
No, go ahead, Elaine.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting because, you know, faith is this exercise that can be entered into from a positive perspective or a negative perspective. And so I think how you enter into it sort of determines what you get out of it. So if someone is entering into a faith space from a perspective of fear, then it becomes exclusionary. It becomes about stopping people from expressing themselves. It becomes about stopping people from moving, you know, freely through the world and being able to engage however they might choose. And I think if you enter into faith from a more positive perspective, it is what you do for yourself in relation to others, but it doesn't create barriers, you know, in terms of how you participate in the world. You don't need to do what I do as long as what you're doing is not, you know, impacting the way that I live. So I won't stop you from having your choices. You can eat the food you want. You can wear the clothes you want to wear. You can, you know, you can kneel down and pray at 5 p.m. to the east if that's what you want to do, or light 10 Christmas candles, or, you know, whatever it is. If that's not stopping me from doing anything, then have at it. But it only becomes problematic when someone is fearful that if you don't do what they do, then somehow that is going to bring some damage or some unfortunate end to their experience. And so, you know, in the case of these two men in the bunker, it's an insecure environment. And so one guy's like, you know, we don't have enough food. I don't know how much ammunition. I don't know what the threats are. And what I don't want is a guy sitting across from me who doesn't share some of my core beliefs in terms of how we're supposed to move forward. And it's just interesting seeing them kind of explore that idea. And Derek's character is not a man who is not a man of faith, but he's also not being forced to reveal what and how he practices that just to make another guy comfortable.
For sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Rhonda. I wanted to talk about Greg and Helen's relationship, because that's a very interesting dynamic in that, you know, there's been kind of rift in the marriage, and it's very subtle. So can you guys address
that? You want to take it, Derek? You want
No,
me to
you
take
need to take that one.
Well, I'm divorced, and and having had issues in a marriage, one of the interesting things is, what do the two partners need from each other when they're trying to repair a rift? And one of the things that was said to me after my divorce was, it's not that either one of the individuals per se failed, it's that the marriage failed, right? The things that we needed to bring to the union in order to keep the union alive, for one reason or another, something was lacking on my part, she may have been deficient on something in her part, but in those moments, it's very difficult to own that. And so one of the challenges that Greg and Helen are having is, you understand in as the film goes on, that they both want to be with each other. They're trying to find a way, but they're having a huge problem being vulnerable to each other in a way that allows them to get on the same page. So a lot of this film, they're kind of seeming to function at cross purposes, but it's only because, they were already having a trouble. Then they got shoved into a bunker, and now they have to fight for their life. So I got to fight for my marriage, and I got to fight for my life at the same time, and there's a beautiful scene, I think, someplace in the middle that really just kind of addresses that sort of complexity. And then ultimately, they're both able to own some of what they brought to the fracture in their relationship. And when you're able to do that, it takes the pressure off of the other person, right? So if I can own what mistakes I've made or what transgressions I've made, then it no longer is necessary for my partner to be able to try to make me accountable. Then they can relax and possibly own what they need to own. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't have dropped the gasoline on the floor. Yeah, but did you have to throw a match on it? Right? Who's right or who's wrong? It was a mistake. Something happened that surely didn't go well, but neither person coming into that, I think, that's not their plan. But, we make mistakes. We don't always make the best choices. And these two people who demonstrate a lot of love, certainly for each other and for their family, are forced to try and negotiate this rift, while, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, is kind of where we find ourselves. So I think that part was really fascinating.
You don't have anything to say, Derek? You read it.
No, what I love and I thought was complex was, as a person, I love that nucleus called the family. And I know that, art is art and life is life, but, always secretly and internally, I'm always going to be fighting for the family, because I was a kid and I saw families split. And I was never taught, as a man, how to sustain a family per se. All I did as a kid was accuse my parents of not just winning. And so it's very interesting as a man that has a family, and you sort of humble yourself, because you go like, oh, this is where my mom and dad must have gotten and given up. So how that relates to Greg and Helen is that, it was interesting because the power shift in their relationship, and being married, that's one of the things that I get to witness, the power shift. But to me, the power shift is more of where she's strong, you may be weak, and vice versa. And so there is no, what I'm learning, as a man, it's both of you as a unit that causes or makes the win. It's not just one person. So what I struggle, with this character, I just let it be seen in the scene. It was like, very complex. Sometimes where I wanted more words, it was just thoughts. Sometimes where it was thoughts, I wanted more words. So yeah, you know, Derek Luke as a whole, as a kid, like I secretly just, I'm always fighting for the family and trying to find the complexities and the solutions, because I think a family is one of the most powerful things that we have, and it needs to be supported.
I just want to add that for Derek, you know, he brought a lot of questions about the nature of Greg as a character. And this was a conversation that we had during the entire shoot, because we were both very concerned that while Greg had some flaws and he didn't necessarily make all the best decisions, one of the things that I had to continually impress on Derek was that what we're going to see is a man who will not give up on his family. Like, ultimately, that's what it is. Despite when he feels bad or when he's got called out on something or he made a good decision or a bad decision, what we ultimately see in this man is that he is someone that will not and does not give up on his family. And ultimately, the fact that he does not give up is what saves them. And so, you know, he's not the alpha male in the sense that he's the guy with the big gun running around and so on, determination. But as they say, it's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man. And that's where Derek's character as Greg really prevails, is that what he's fighting for is just and right. And it doesn't come at the expense of his adversary, although the adversary doesn't necessarily understand that. So that's really the thing that makes a powerful man powerful, is his ability to, you know, exercise his might, you know, where and when it's necessary, and also to exercise, you know, grace and mercy when that's, you know, appropriate as well. And that really becomes the measure of a man. And I think that's why this character, despite, you know, some of his flaws and missteps, in terms of the level of integrity that he has, it's incredibly high. And that's one of the things I really wanted for Derek to be able to understand in his character. And I'm hoping that that kind of comes through and that gave him the fuel that he needed to make it work.
Thank you. It came through to me.
Again, so one of the classic conflicts that we have in society in general are the way men and women want to lead necessarily, or just our nature. So women are more natural and nurturing, and we see that with Erica's character and her taking care of Amber. And then we have the men who want to be top dog, alpha male, who's going to be in charge. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? And when it comes to survival, is there a yin and yang? Do we need both, or do we need one more than the other?
Oh, shoot.
you or me? You want to go for? Do I try to save you, or do you try to save me?
You know what? I would love to sort of unpack that, you know, idea that, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, and please stop me. And this is why I said I love the family and support the family, is that it's in our story, it seems like the men are destroyers. And you know, the women are these, you know, nurturers, and I believe that. However, I think that there is something that is innate in us as the male man, that is about, you know, protection. And I think if it's used or harnessed or honored correctly, that we both can have an ebb and flow. But if not, we'll have some Greg and Helen issues. Come on, Ali.
Well, you listen. I'll put it like this. You know, in the union, when you talk about, you know, a marriage and, you know, a partnership or whatever you want to call it, in that union, you know, one party is going to have a set of skills and expertise and perspectives and abilities that the other person is likely not going to have. And so there are times when, you know, one set of abilities is the one that you really need to be able to get through a difficult moment. And sometimes you need the other set of abilities, and sometimes it's a combination of the two. So these sort of abject notions about, you know, who's a leader Well, it depends on what the circumstance is. So one of the great things, here's an interesting thing, and I'm going to get in trouble about this, but I'm okay getting in this trouble. But one of the things that men are very accustomed to is hierarchy because of sports, right? For instance, but men tend to be very comfortable understanding what the pecking order is. And the reason that they tend to be comfortable understanding what the pecking order is because there's a sort of might makes right component that men all understand, right? If I walk into a room with Derek and the conversation is who's a particular sort of personality, well, he's that guy, right? I know that when I walk into the room, if that's what they're looking for, he's the actor, he's the face, he's a brand, and I'm gonna take a step back, right? But if the conversation becomes, well, what are we about to talk about the DNA of this film or whatever, then he's go, oh, okay, that's his department. Right. So we're very, very good with doing that as men, but sometimes when we interact with women, because we don't have the same sort of mental infrastructure when it comes to problem solving and moving through the world, we have to learn kind of how to integrate this separate style, because that's not necessarily how women function in groups, right? If what you're bringing is sort of this abstract perspective to the table, that's one thing. If what you're bringing to the table is the ability to kill a bear, that's something else. So it's really just being able to ascertain what a person is good at when that's the thing that needs to be put into play. I ain't got to be the guy to kick your ass if I got the guy that can kick your ass on my team. And when it's time to ass kick, I let him step up, even if I'm the guy that calls the shots, right? No great team wins without a great coach. And so who's the leader? Is it Kobe? Is it Phil Jackson? Is it Shaq? You tell me. It depends on what the moment is. And in any given moment, somebody's capacity to execute the best idea might be greater than someone else's, but one person's ability to determine what the best idea is something else. And that tends to be where your leader is, whoever that might be.
I'm looking at the faces. I'm trying to get the approval. Right now. Let me see. Carolyn.
Thank you,
I don't think I got in trouble. I think I got out of that one safely.
Okay.
No, you did make your way out of that one safely. So my question is, again, is for both of you, and it's kind of leading off of what you're talking about with leaders. The interesting thing with this film, like we talked a bit about the space and using the space as a pressure cooker for the characters, but mainly for the adults. But I want you guys to talk about the kids now, because something interesting happens in the film where we see Helen breastfeeding the baby, and Greg isn't the one who gets upset. It's his daughter. And I thought that was very interesting because Greg didn't let his ego step in the way and say, oh, my wife is feeding someone else's baby. He's like, this is what this child needs. And I see that that's a necessity at the moment, but his daughter doesn't understand that. She looks at it as him, as almost as a way of his masculinity being eroding in the moment, because her father isn't stepping up for his mother. Her father isn't stepping up and demanding that her mother stop giving basically nourishment to another child. So I want you both to talk about that scene in particular and about the dynamics between the parents and the children.
Go ahead, DNA.
Well, for me, it as a teenage girl, in this society right now, you got a ton of information. This is not a girl that's not smart. Kids always know what's going on in their house. They always know. You might think you're hiding something from them. You're not, right? They're on the other side of that door. They're downstairs. They're in a room, so they know what's happening. And so I love the idea that this girl has been raised in a lot of ways to be a truth teller. So there are moments when it might seem that she might be, right up against the line of being disrespectful. But she even says in the scene, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm saying what you told me to say. And so, the parents are kind of being challenged around the fact that they are raising, a young, intelligent woman who they're setting up to go into the world and have a real life. But those qualities come to play in the room when she can see that the mother and the father are not doing what she in her gut feels is the right thing to do. They're not communicating. And so she's saying to her father, look, man, I don't like what this is. And I think she's going to the party that she thinks can make a difference, right? Because that's the other thing that kids know. Kids know, oh, okay, mom's gonna dig in on this one. I'm never getting anywhere with her on this. So I should probably talk to dad. Like kids know. And so I love the idea that the character of Zoe comes to her father and is saying, I'm having a problem. Here's what it is. And that actually speaks to the honesty and the intimacy of their relationship, is that it's not that she feels like she can come to him, she does come to him. She says what she believes. He listens to her. And that's what she needs. She needs the comfort, the security, and the safety of being heard and understanding that her fears are not for naught, and that somebody's going to try to do something to protect her when she doesn't see the way. But she's still a child. And that's what her father has to say to her. You know, what you think this is something different, because the position that you're standing in, you're not seeing it from where I'm seeing it. And ultimately, you know, they come to a close moment. And it's helpful, I think, for both of them to be able to speak that out loud. But for the father, there's certainly a type of fuel to be able to say what is truly happening for him. And even him expressing fear gives his daughter comfort because he acknowledges that this is a dangerous situation and we're working on it. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I thought I didn't. All right, as long as y'all working on it, I'll take this hug and hope for the best.
Wow, that's a good answer. Shout out to Zamani.
Zamani Wilder.
Yeah, she's amazing. And yeah, I got a lot out of that scene as well. You know, there was some comfort in it. I mean, my son is only turning 6 years old, but he totally keeps me honest, you know, even at, you know, at 6. So it was interesting how he was mirroring what we taught him and how he mirrors that. And it was one of my favorite scenes because I felt like Zamani was just so present, and she's a gifted actress. So I just shout out to her.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie from the Coalition again. My question is for you, Ali. One of the things that I really loved about this was the tension you have both outside what's going on in the real world and inside within the bunker. I wanted to know about the emotional beats and how you went about finding those moments, because what I noticed is it's not overpowered with music. It doesn't seem to, you know, drive us emotionally. And one of the things that I really loved about this was that I was screaming at the film, you know, don't do this. Why are you doing this? You was able to capture that tension with just, it felt like just pure honesty. So can you just go about explaining how you was able to find those beats and those moments, and whether or not it was like a visual or an emotional cue for you?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things. And first of all, let me give a shout out to Allison and Nicholas Buckmelter, who wrote the script. I thought they did an amazing job with crafting the characters and the circumstance. And so coming into it, I try to stay. Derek just spoke of presence. You know, in every scene, what's important to me is to try to stay present. And so in that scene, what you have, you know, like the amen moment, right? You have this whole prayer, and then there's a beat of silence. And before the character of Winter says the line, we see him staring at Greg. Like, really? Are you just going to sit here at my table? And then it becomes, well, what's he going to say? And then when he says it, it becomes, how's Greg going to respond? After he responds, is he going to take this sitting down? Right? So it's all of these, it's moment to moment. We realize that this is a perilous situation. You know, somebody can light that fuse and something can blow at any second, because people aren't being honest in some instances. They're holding things back. They don't feel safe, and they don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. They don't show us their whole hand. So, you know, Greg and Helen aren't speaking to each other. So they don't have a plan with each other to get out of this circumstance. So we're watching Helen do things that are cross purposes of what Greg is doing. We're watching Greg do things that are cross purposes with what Helen is doing. You know, Winter has his own set of, he has his own agenda. If he said, look, guys, you know, it's going to be rough down here, but maybe we can work together and try and, you know, ration these supplies, then, they could have been friendly, but he doesn't do that. right? He's nervous about every single little thing. He's got a baby on the way. There's new people in the space. He doesn't know who they are. There's dangers outside. And that sort of PTSD becomes the baseline of your experience. So you're nervous all the time. So it's a nervous energy that's present in that bunker because of the lack of communication, the conflicts that are not being spoke about, and then just the insecurity of the circumstance in general. Are we going to survive in here? I don't know, but we damn sure can't go out there. So now what? That's where you get all of those moments from. And you just let them sit sometimes. Ain't nothing more nervous. No, nothing's more nerve-wracking than a person sitting quietly looking at you.
Very true. And for you, Derek, was there a process of finding that? Was it a collaborative effort instead of talking, let me just stare?
See, Ali made fun of me the other day. He was like, Ali said, "What'd you say?" You said, "In every what? In every scene." Listen, I love those. I personally love those moments because any form of truth and honesty just forces you to stop acting and start listening. And I love that. And sometimes you get a chance to do that in life, but you definitely got a chance to do it here on our film set. But no, Ali was he threw a jab at me about
it was a jab of appreciation, man. I thought it was a dope move that you do.
Yeah, well, yes. But I enjoyed those processes, and I love the tension. I thought shout out to my man Sam. I just love those moments that you create. And one of the, all jokes aside, Ali, man, thank you, man. Because I think I told you, but it was like, I knew you, but I didn't know you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And one of the things that has happened from doing series TV is that you start meeting more of the committee. And so that ownership and relationship between the director and the actor is similar to the tension that we're talking about, because I think the statistic is 87% of relationships fail because of lack of communication. Well, there's performances that fail because there's lack of communication. And so, yeah, I really appreciate it. And I wanted to thank you, man, for, even though I didn't know a lot about you, you know what I'm saying? And you know what I mean? So I appreciate that.
You know, it's something I actually learned partially from my days as a stand-up comic. You know, I'd be doing a big show, there's 3,000 people in the audience, you're setting a joke up, and you stop for a second and you can hear the silence. And the silence is nerve-wracking. And so one of two things can happen when you hear something like that. You can panic and try and be funny to get them back because you think you've lost them. Or you recognize, oh, they're listening. I've actually exercised my power as a performer, and this silence that I hear is them waiting for me to do the next thing. They're 100% engaged. They're not bored. They're riveted. So being able to put those sorts of moments on a screen and not try to force the viewer to feel something by rushing to the next angle or the next line or the next shot, and letting it sit with the performer for a second brings us into it. That's actually what creates the connection. That's actually what creates, you know, whatever it is that you feel, is having enough time to engage, you know, and you can't force that. You can't make people feel something. You have to let them feel something. So you just got to let them sit there long enough to start, you know, getting a little twitchy and go, oh, okay, what's about to happen? And the actors, you know, Derek, Sam, Erica just made a meal, you know, a delicious meal out of a lot of those moments.
Hey, Karan again from Karanism.com. This was a whole lot of homegrown horror. You got Black people living in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure if they run into or from something, but I thought one of the most interesting dynamics that played into fear was in the dynamic between the women and what defines them as women, what defines them as mothers. I think in a lot of strategic ways, motherhood became the weapon. So I don't know if it was in the best interest of the baby for her to be the wet nurse, because I'm thinking that was strategy. But when it comes to the women, And those dynamics, it really felt like there was a woman in the room writing this part, because their relationship, they had moments with one another where there was tenderness and appreciation and respect, and then others where there was just straight fear and misunderstanding. Were those choices intentional as well, or was that just my mind working on overtime?
A combination. I mean, certainly there was, material that was scripted for the character of Amber and Helen, and the way that they were interacting with one another. But when we got the two actresses, a thing occurs because Helen is older. She's actually a doctor, so she's skilled in a particular way. She's got a husband, and she's had a structured, formalized, a recognizable family situation. And the character of Amber is coming from a much more fragile place, right? She's not a secure woman in the world. She's landed with this guy who has some ideas that may not necessarily be the best ideas. She's trying to make herself safe inside of his space by, being that sort of submissive woman that I think is the sort of idea that a lot of women reject. And she's not doing it from a place of confidence. She's doing it from a place of fear, right? What's out there for me, I don't know. So I got to get with this guy's program because that's the safest bet for me. And when she comes into contact with Helen, she's dealing with a woman that has a sort of intellect and a sort of power that she doesn't possess. So she may be drawn to that in some ways. But for Helen, what she's doing with this young girl who is her safety net inside this space, she's a tool. She's absolutely being used. And she has no way of understanding that that's what's occurring for her. And Helen doesn't mean to harm this woman. Even in the way she chooses to help is at that woman's expense and to the safety and sanctity of her own family, even if her husband doesn't even understand it. So Helen's playing some next level chess. like Helen is 3D chess, right? Everybody else is 2D and Helen is 3D. She's like, and again, when we start talking about leaders and strength, is that a thing that you can explain to somebody? That we're about to play a game of 3D chess and I have the ability and perspective to play all of these levels, so sit back and follow me? Or do you just do it and let it kind of play out the way that it plays out? But not unlike Greg, Helen is also, from the time she gets in that bunker, she's fighting to save her family. She's just not doing it in a way that's recognizable to the men.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
It's the art of war.
I'm being quiet. I'm like, That was the tension. That was the real tension on set. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that was the real tension for me, because I admire the brilliance. I admire the brilliance in my own wife. She impresses me all the time, just like Helen did. Again, my concern was identifying that, yes, Greg was fighting for his family, but also wanted to make sure that with the complexities that he understood the gravity and the landscape by which he was, and how do you navigate into my own right. I've been in places where my wife would say something to me. She was like, Derek, some press, they were like trying to photograph my son, and I asked them, not to. And my wife pulled me to the side. She was like, "Yo, Derek, listen, you are well intentioned, but you are a man of color in a sea of people that don't look like you, and it looks like you're towering over her. And all I could see is I'm fighting for my family." But she just unpacked it, and the wisdom, and for her to see that. And so I've been in those situations, so I'm definitely not taking anything. And she's talked me off the roof many times where I'm like, I'm just. And she's like, I understand what you're doing, but it doesn't apply in the situation. You have no clarity to attack. You know what I mean? Not now. So I can respect Helen. However, it was tension on the set because I'm like, yo, don't, because what was the line they kept saying about Greg? Like, do your part. And I'm like, what? I'm like, look, I can't deliver no babies. Like, so, you know what I'm saying? It was creating this panic in my head. And anyway, I'm bringing Greg to y'all. So,
so coming back in real time.
It was a challenging dynamic, and it was a soft kind of fight between femininity and masculinity and that kind of power. I also thought it was really interesting when he asked the young boy, you know, is this your first time being around a girl? That was an interesting moment too, and realizing that it wasn't just the adults, it was the children that were also affected by those power dynamics. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
This film has a lot of moments where things are not said. People observing one another. It's in the not necessarily, you know, the words, because everybody's trying to survive. Everybody's trying to figure out how to move and still not lose their spot, their moment. Was that done intentional to heighten things? Because I find that more chilling and more, I think, harder to decipher, because you're like, okay, where are things going? That question would be more for you, Ali.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things they say about script writing is you're not done until you can't take anything else out. So some of those moments, some things are scripted and they might have a lot of dialogue. And, we had a couple opportunities to, rehearse a few scenes. We didn't have as much time as we would have liked to have had. But what we were able to create in some of those moments were, here's some things that don't need to be said because it's apparent from the energy in the room. We see it, there's so many things that are happening in unspoken, glances and looks. What does a character notice between two other characters is something that is written so that even things that aren't executed with words is still storytelling. So, it's a visual medium and we have to give people things to perceive and create their own ideas about. When Amber and Greg come and see Helen, with that baby, they don't say anything to each other in the moment. And as the audience, we are left to fill in those gaps with all kinds of things. How is he feeling? How is she feeling? Helen looks at them. What is she thinking in that moment? And so we get excited about the what ifs. What if she said this? What if he did this? And then we don't unpack the moment until later, but we know a bomb just went off. But you said the neutron bomb, it destroys the people and leaves the building standing. It's kind of one of those moments, the shock waves that goes through the people, is not indicative of the damage that is actually being done in that moment and how it's affecting everybody. So yes, reactions, silence, pacing, all of those are things, the less you explain, the more tense it gets. And then you address it at some point, but you let it sit for a little while so that people can, fill in the gaps, because that's what people actually do. We wonder what somebody's thinking. We fill in the gaps with things that we imagine they would say, not based on their experience, but based on our own. And then we take that to them. And sometimes we're kind of right, sometimes we're kind of wrong. And then another thing occurs. So that's kind of what happens in the Zoe Greg moment, is that, she knows a thing happened and they've been sitting on top of these feelings. And in this one emotional moment, they kind of explode for a second, and then there's relief. So yeah, it's all in there. It's all in the writing.
Thank you so much.
I just have a comment. I'm just like from Pootie Tang to here. They're coming the wrong way.
She said from Pootie Tang.
Oh. Wow.
But Derek said something very important a few questions ago, where it's like, there's nothing like growing up to make you understand the choices that your parents made. I guess very humbling.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think we did. I think that we created something that really spoke to, that gap in experience. Greg and Helen's family, when they come into this bunker, are encountering a man who's had an entirely different set of experiences than them. And while there are aspects of race and gender politics that come into play, that character is not inherently a bad man. It's just that his experience in society has given him a set of ideas about how things go that are not entirely accurate, because he's had a very extreme experience. He's a veteran. He's been, he's fought in country where people have a whole different set of ideas about family and religion and beliefs. And he's learned to distrust his own government for good reason. And so he's bringing all these perspectives into these interactions. And in a lot of ways, he could give a shit that they're Black. That's the least important thing to him. They happen to be Black. And I love the idea that while these two families recognize that there is a racial dynamic, the need to survive and what we need to do to protect our family, what we need to do to maintain and protect and continue our relationship are things that exist outside of, these sort of racial and ethnic boxes that we put people into. These people would have the exact same set of problems that they're having, regardless of who was in the bunker. But for me, being able to express part of that with a Black family who is intent on being together and through their mistakes are demonstrating love and diligence, was a great thing, because we see that with white families all the time. So I just loved seeing them being challenged in a way that left them stronger as a result of what they went through.
I like that, Ali. I like that, brother.
Wow. Well, I guess on that note, we'll wrap things up for today. Ali and Derek, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you joining us. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.